Hey YouTube, this is Josh Mon. We are back in the messy garage once again. Today I thought we would do an unboxing slash uncorking of one of the most famous single malt scotches. It's one that I have yet to try, so first impressions, I thought it could be kind of fun. Today I will be drinking Laphroaig 10. Yes, that is right, the famous peaty, smoky Islay beast. Now, I really love Ardbeg 10, so I've got high hopes for this. Laphroaig 10, on the front, it's got a weird little message. It says, by appointment of the to HRH, the Prince of Wales, distiller and supplier of single malt Scotch whiskey, D. Johnson & Co., Laphroaig, Island of Islay. On the back, it says, Laphroaig single malt Scotch whiskey has always kept itself a bit remote, like the islanders of Islay themselves. A touch aloof at first, but make the effort. Broach acquaintance, and you'll have a warm and genuine friend for life. High promises. Take it neat like a stalwart, or with a splash of soft water. Roll it around on your tongue. Release the pungent, earthy aroma of blue peat smoke, the sweet nuttiness of the barley, the delicate, heathery perfume of Islay's streams. Close your eyes and imagine the waves lapping Laphroaig, the beautiful hollow by the broad bay. So I figured we'd give it a try here. We'll see if I'm able to actually open the darn thing. There we go. Yeah. There it is. Even comes with a little book. Your passport to Islay. Yeah, it seems like it's a little bit of an advertisement for their distillery. I'll get into that later. Yeah, so it's basically says the exact same thing I just read to you, a little more summarized on the back. Laphroaig is an all-malt Scotch whiskey from the remote island of Islay in the Western Isles of Scotland. Laphroaig is a Gaelic word, meaning the beautiful hollow by the broad bay. They cram a lot into those few syllables. In the making of Laphroaig, malted barley is dried over a peat fire. The smoke from the peat gives Laphroaig its particularly rich flavor. Laphroaig is best savored with meat or with a little cool water. Well, I have water, but no meat. Maybe I should have brought some cold beef broth. Bridged the gap. Alright, let's see here. If I have any fingernails left to... Alright, here goes. Smells almost exactly like the ocean. Alright, first impression. Let's give it a good healthy pour. On the aroma, immediate brine. A little bit of that barley, but strong oceanic smell. It's not as oily as Ardbeg, or not as tarry in aroma as Ardbeg 10 is, at least first impression. Tiny bit of floral sweetness. That's pretty good. To me, wow, it's kaleidoscopic on the palate. It reminds me a lot of if Ardbeg had some stewed mushrooms in it. It's got, it reminds me, there's a fermented tea, I believe it's called puer. Reminds me a lot of that. It's got that earthy, fermenty quality, like I've been digging around in the garden. Lots of smoke, but it's a little more balanced than, or just a touch more laid back than Ardbeg is with the smoke. I think Ardbeg clocks in at 65 parts per million peat, and this is Laphroaig is 10. It's quite good and strange. It's a smoky, peaty. A lot of people have called it medicinal, but I'd say it's more earthy than that. A lot of umami going on. I'm gonna let this rest for a second, see how it opens up. Take a little bit of my cold meat water. You know, I've been reading lately, since I like to talk about weird historical tangents. I'll make it a short one today. I was reading about how in World War I, especially at the start of it, 1914 and 15, the British military barely had any grenades available in their stockpiles. They had assumed that grenades were obsolete, kind of a Napoleonic era quirk. They thought that they'd been pretty much phased out of warfare when we moved away from stagnant fortresses. And the Germans did not share that opinion because they had planned on invading a lot of fortresses. So at the start of the war, the Germans had a lot of stick grenades, whereas the British had very few. And so soldiers were instructed on the improvisation of making their own grenades. And they would take these jars that their jam had come in. Apparently sometimes they would also use the tin cans that their pipe tobacco would arrive in as well. And they were instructed on putting in a smaller can with a, I think it was an artillery charge. I'm not entirely sure. They had, I guess, enough of these detonators lying around. They'd put the explosives inside of the smaller can, and in the space between the two cans, they would fill it with, at first they would use 10-penny nails, they would use shrapnel, scrap iron, whatever was around. Later on in the war, they were given these, I guess, intentionally produced fragmentation, like ball bearings. But anyway, sorry, people keep pulling into my driveway. Hey. And we're back. So by later on in the war, the British were given more specific ingredients to make their bombs. I believe this was by mid-1915. So the jam tin grenades were getting more and more refined. But still, I just cannot imagine what it must be like to be sitting in a hole in the ground, facing the entire might of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you know, or perhaps the Ottomans are closing in on you, and they're lobbing these stick grenades into your trenches, and you're running for your life, and someone says, "Oh, I've got a solution," and they hand you a jam jar with a little fuse sticking out of it that they light with a cigarette, and goes, kss, and then you just throw the jam for all you're worth. They made do, but I heard the French were even at the start of the war pulling Napoleonic-era mortars out from their storage, black powder, abominations. Everyone was scrambling at first. But back to the scotch. Once it's opened up a little bit, I get more of that, I guess it's the heather? I've never actually consumed heather in anything, so I wouldn't know, but there's a sweet floral note that I'm getting. It's certainly smoky and earthy. Ooh, there's a little bit of a black tea kind of thing going on here. I know it's no big shock, but Laphroaig 10, it's one of the most famous whiskeys, and I can see why. It's very tasty, if you like peat, that is. I would say it's not quite as aggressive on the palate as Ardbeg 10 is, but that might also just be my palate. It's got more of a cereal grain sweetness to it. It's smoky, it's briny, it's salty, it's got the umami notes, it's got sweetness to it, it's floral. There's a lot going on. So for the money, Laphroaig 10, I would say is definitely worth it. I wouldn't make it an everyday sipper, but I usually save the Islay scotches for at the end of a very difficult week or something like that, where I sit outside and savor it, as opposed to bourbon, which I might pour while I watch TV or something like that. Anyway, thank you for listening. I appreciate your patience once again with my poor audio and video, but it's a pleasure speaking with you as always.